on Hebrews chapter 9. Verse 1 says, "Now even the first covenant had regulations of divine worship and the earthly sanctuary." Now, this chapter is a continuation of the theme of the previous chapter. Paul is building upon the theme of the new covenant. Yahweh has, with Israel, compared to the old covenant that was made on Mount Sinai. So that's what he's talking about here. The old covenant consisted of people agreeing to obey Elohim in all his laws, statutes, ordinances, and commandments. If they would do so, he will be their Elohim and they'll be his people. Now, that was in Exodus 19, starting at verse 3. "And Moses went up to Elohim, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice, and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words which Yahweh had commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that Yahweh has spoken we will do. And Moses brought back the words of the people to Yahweh." Now, this first covenant failed due to the disobedience of the people. Now, the new covenant, which is with Israel, is Yahweh writing His Torah on our hearts and on our minds. And we talked about that last chapter, Hebrews 8, starting at verse 7. "For if that first covenant had been faultless, there would have been no occasion sought for a second. For finding fault with them, he said, Behold, days are coming, says Yahweh, when I will effect a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not like the covenant which I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. For they did not continue in my covenant, and I did not care for them, says Yahweh. For this is the covenant that I'll make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I'll put my Torah into their minds, and I'll write them upon their hearts, and I'll be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall not teach everyone his fellow citizen and everyone his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest of them. For I will be merciful to their iniquities, and I'll remember their sins no more." When he said a new covenant, he's made the first obsolete. But whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to disappear. Now, the content of the two covenants is the same. It still consists of Elohim's Torah. But the conditions of the covenant are what was changed. The new covenant brings salvation and enablement to follow Elohim's Torah, whereas the old covenant was man's attempt at righteousness on his own. And the old covenant, it dealt with an earthly priest from the tribe of Levi. Now, the new covenant brings redemption and salvation through Yeshua Messiah, our perfect high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Now, since the new covenant requires a perfect high priest, the law concerning the priest from the tribe of Levi had to be transferred or set aside. And this sets the scene now for chapter 9. Even the first covenant had ordinances of divine service for the high priest and earthly sanctuary. Now, the new covenant has some of these same ordinances, but a more excellent and perfect sacrifice. Let's look at verses 2 through 4. "For there was a tabernacle prepared, the outer one, in which were the lampstand and the table and the sacred bread. This is called the holy place. And behind the second veil, there was a tabernacle which is called the Holy of Holies, having a golden altar of incense, and the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden jar holding the manna, and Aaron's rod which budded, and the tables of the covenant." Now, we're given a layout of much of the tabernacle here. In the holy place, we had the lampstand, the table of showbread, and the showbread, as you can see there. In the Holy of Holies, now he says in the Holy of Holies is the altar of incense, but it wasn't really in there except one day a year. That's when the high priest would take it in there with him. So he's saying that essentially it was in there. The censer is to produce a screen of smoke so the high priest can't see Elohim, which is very important. And there's some controversy with the contents of the Ark of the Covenant. Because it says there in verse 4 that the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden jar holding the manna, and Aaron's rod which budded, and the tables of the covenant. So now the Tanakh, though, is clear that the golden jar holding the manna and Aaron's rod were set before, in front of the Ark of the Covenant, not inside it. In Exodus 16, verses 33 and 34, we read, and Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer full of manna in it, and place it before Yahweh to be kept throughout your generations. As Yahweh commanded Moses, so Aaron placed it before the testimony to be kept. So it's placed in front of. And same thing with Aaron's rod. We see in Numbers 17, verse 10, but Yahweh said to Moses, put back the rod of Aaron before the testimony to keep it as a sign against the rebels, that you may put an end to their grumblings against me so that they should not die. The Tanakh mentions that the ark contained only the ark, the tablets of the covenant. In 1 Kings 8, verse 9. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, where Yahweh made a covenant with the sons of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. So, we got an issue here. So, whenever something like this comes up, and I always like to solve these things, figure out what the answer is. Are these 2 things inside the Ark of the Covenant or not? Well, the Tanakh says no. And we just read in Hebrews where they said that it says they are. Now, if you look closely at that verse, Hebrews 9:4. The Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden jar holding the manna, Aaron's rod which budded, in the tables of the covenant. That Greek preposition, in, it's pronounced in, is translated in a lot of different, you can use prepositions in a lot of ways, you know. Sometimes it's translated as by. As a matter of fact, that's the second most common way to translate that. So they were by the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? And that's just how I've got to look at it. I think they were placed before the ark, and they were there, and what was inside was just the tablets. Any questions on that before we move on? Just a minor thing. And besides, it's not the author's intent here to give you a perfect description of the tabernacle. That's not what he's trying to do. All right? But those things were there in the Holy of Holies. And that's what he's telling us. Go on to verse 5. And above it were the cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat, but of these things we cannot now speak in detail. Now when these things have been thus prepared, the priests are continually entering the outer tabernacle, performing the divine worship. But into the second only the high priest enters once a year, not without taking blood, which he offers for himself and for the sins of the people committed in ignorance. The Holy Spirit is signifying this, that the way into the holy place has not yet been disclosed, while the outer tabernacle is still standing. Now, let's look at verse 5 first. It tells us that Paul doesn't want to speak in detail about the furnishings of the tabernacle. That's not what he wants to do. Look how this is translated in Young's literal translation. And over it, cherubim of the glory overshadowing the mercy seat, concerning which we are not now to speak particularly. So he's not wanting to describe everything in detail. That's not his purpose here. What he wants to do is discuss that the priest always went into the first part of the tabernacle, which is the holy place. But once a year, the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies. And he did it alone and not without blood. He offered the sacrifice for himself, for his sins, and then for the sins of the people committed in ignorance. And verse 8 is interesting. It's saying there, the way into the Holy of Holies was not yet made manifest while the first tabernacle was still standing. We have no way of reaching the Father in and of ourselves, is what he's saying. We can't reach the Father. Look at verses 9 and 10. Which is a symbol for the present time. Accordingly, both gifts and sacrifices are offered, which cannot make the worshiper perfect in conscience, since they relate only to food and drink and various washings, regulations for the body imposed until a time of reformation. The gifts and the sacrifices could not make him who performed the service perfect in regard to our conscience or in regard to sin in our body. So, those gifts and sacrifices, they only pertain to, as he says, to food, drink, various washings, and regulations for the body. They don't change our conscience. Now, what does he mean by our conscience? What is your conscience? Tell me that. You know, we're told, let your conscience be your guide, right? Let's say your conscience is your innate sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what it is.
Told it's wrong, your conscience will remind you of it.
Yeah. You see, that's what the Spirit of the Father does within you, is change that. It changes your conscience. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that that's your only guide, follow your conscience. No, you follow His Torah. All right? But your conscience is molded by the Torah, is what happens. Okay, that's what he's saying. These offerings and these gifts didn't change that. It does not change that conscience that we have. And the tabernacle on earth was not the real thing. You got to keep that in mind too. It's a copy of the one in the heavenlies with the Father. The real thing is up there, and I say in heaven. People say in heaven. Really, the term is usually it's a plural, not a singular. It's in the heavenlies. It's somewhere. It's somewhere we can't reach, touch, see, or feel, okay, or hear. But the one we had, this tabernacle we had, it was only a shadow of that one which was in heaven. It was an imperfect one too, an imperfect replica, because it was made by men. Good, verse 11. But when Messiah appeared as a high priest of the good things to come, he entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this creation. So Messiah came as the high priest of good things to come. He entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, which is somewhere in the heavenlies. We don't know much about that. Now, the tabernacle was not for our pleasure. It was not for our convenience. It was a model of that real tabernacle in heaven. The laws of the tabernacle on earth apply to the one up there also. However, the high priest and the sacrifice are more excellent and perfect. They're not a shadow of the real thing, but they are the real thing. Now, this passage here, when it talks about this, some of those scenes in Revelation come to mind, because Yeshua appears in Revelation as our high priest. He's dressed in high priest garb when he appears to John. And he is the high priest after the order of Melchizedek. And if we look at Messiah in Revelation entering the tabernacle in heaven and breaking the seals to the Lamb's book of life, like in Revelation 5, starting at verse 1. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals?" Okay, this book, if you don't understand what this book is, you'll never understand Revelation. Okay, the book, very, very important to know. What is the Abrahamic covenant? What do you inherit with the Abrahamic covenant? What do we inherit? Land. Land of what? Israel, right? That's what we inherit, right? What he has in that book with 7 seals on it, which, by the way, the same thing is done in Jeremiah. When we go over Revelation, we'll go over this in detail. a title deed to the land of Israel is what that is. Okay? Now, in the time of John, who owned that land? Really, the Romans did. Okay? And also in time, the Muslims did. Okay? Then the Byzantine Empire did for a while. We had the Crusades. You see, Revelation is the story of the redemption of that land and of that people. He's going to open those seals and reclaim the land of Israel for his people, for his return. That is what this book is. Now, if the one who is if you're going to redeem something, a people and a land, like remember the book of Ruth? Very important. What kind of a redeemer did it have to be? What was that called? What's the term they used? The kinsman redeemer. In order to be a redeemer, then, had to be a kinsman of the people. Okay? Had to be a close kinsman. If you're going to redeem it for the people of Israel, who did it have to be? An Israelite. Yeah. He's an Israelite. And it has to be one that pays the price. Okay? Because you've got to pay that price of redemption. And that's what he does. He paid that price of redemption. And now, John's looking at this. Who's worthy to open the book and to break its seals? Strong angel proclaims with a loud voice. In verse 3, no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the book or to look into it. And I began to weep greatly because no one was found worthy to open the book or to look into it, because no one had paid the price. And one of the elders said to me, stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. Notice how they make sure they notate this is a kinsman. Okay? This is a relative. And I saw between the throne with the 4 living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Elohim, sent out into all the earth. And he came and he took it out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having each one a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals. For you were slain and did purchase for Elohim with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. And they've made them to be a kingdom and priests to our Elohim, and they'll reign upon the earth. And I looked, and behold, and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, and the living creatures and the elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. And every created thing which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth and on the sea and all things in them, I heard saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever. And the 4 living creatures kept saying, Amen, and the elders fell down and worshipped. Now, we'll go over each one of these verses in detail when we do Revelation, but you get the gist. That's what this is. This is the reclaiming of the land of Israel by the Redeemer and the people. Just like with Ruth. If you're going to reclaim that land, what did you have to get with it? You had to take Ruth with it. Okay? So, and remember, the one kinsman didn't want it. He said at first he did, then he said he didn't. You remember why? Because that first kid, that was a moot. I don't know if he was married or not, but that first kid that he had with Ruth, that would be the brother's kid, and he gets half the inheritance, a double portion of the inheritance. And he didn't want that. He wanted all the inheritance to go to his children. Also, look at Revelation 7, starting at verse 15. For this reason they are before the throne of Elohim, and they serve him day and night in his temple, and he sits on the throne, and he who sits on the throne shall spread his tabernacle over them. They shall hunger no more, nor neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun beat down on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb in the center of the throne shall be their shepherd, and shall guide them to springs of the water of life, and Elohim shall wipe every tear from their eyes. So all these things point to that tabernacle that is in the heavenlies. Let's go back to Hebrews 9, verse 12. And not through the blood of goats and calves, but through his own blood. He entered the holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. So our Messiah, our high priest, obtained our eternal redemption through his sacrifice. The work of redemption is done. Okay, the price was paid. Verses 13 and 14. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling those who had been defiled, sanctify for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim? Now, if the blood of bulls and goats sanctified the high priest for the purifying of the flesh, which that's all it did was provide for the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Messiah cleanse your conscience of dead works also? Okay, the blood of bulls and goats would cleanse the flesh, essentially. Okay, now he's saying that the blood of Messiah will cleanse your conscience. And that's how we receive the breath of the Father. It's through Messiah our conscience is cleansed from dead works to serve the living Elohim. Now, many in days past tried to follow his Torah in order to avoid condemnation. Now the Torah is written on our hearts and in our minds through the new covenant. Yeah.
What is the cleansing of the flesh?
That was a wiping of sins. Okay, or an atonement of sins. At least a covering for them. That's what he's referring to.
Did we continue to beat ourselves?
Oh, no, not at all. That's just realizing your sin. That's all that is. And realizing your sin is part of the blessing. See, and it says,
But aren't we supposed to forgive ourselves?
well, I don't think that phrase,
Not forgiving somebody else?
no, I'd say forgiving other people is more important.
Than forgiving yourself?
Yeah, I'm not saying we shouldn't forgive ourselves, but I think that's more psychology of today as far as forgiving ourselves. But we've been an offense to the Father. We can't forget that. That's an issue. That's an issue. Now, we don't need to keep looking back. We need to look forward. All right? That's what we need to do, is focus on what's ahead, what's now and what's ahead, instead of what's behind us. Because I don't think there's anybody in this room that would get past the stoning that would have happened for the things that we did. I know I wouldn't. How many Sabbath days did we work? How many of a lot of different things did we do? Just thinking, and then, in the back of your mind, Jesus understands, right? That's what we thought. Yeah, Charles?
One of the things, movement.
Yes, we're changing. It's a process. Romans 7 talks about this, what you're talking about too, by the way. A lot. Paul talks about that in his writing of Romans. He talks about that. Oh man, I was bad. You can read that. He tortures himself over that. And that's. I think it's good to remember that. Okay, we have to remember what we receive through the blood of Messiah is nothing we deserved, and it's nothing we did. Well, the Spirit of Elohim cleanses our conscience with a desire to follow Him completely out of love and obedience. Okay? Verse 15. And for this reason, He's the mediator of a new covenant, in order that since a death has taken place for the redemption of the transgressions that were committed under the first covenant, those who have been called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. Okay, this is interesting. Yeshua is the mediator of a new covenant through His death for our transgressions that were committed under the first covenant. Then Paul, he clearly states here that only those who have been called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. Okay. Well, note there he makes, it's only those that He chooses that will get that. There will be only beneficiaries of the promised eternal inheritance. And he wants to talk more about this death that takes place for the redemption too. Verses 16 and 17. For where a covenant is, there must of necessity be the death of the one who made it. For a covenant is valid only when men are dead, for it is never enforced while the one who made it lives. This is interesting. It's led a lot of people, like Monty Judah. You know who Monty Judah is? He and other people have stated that it seems that Paul here was confused between what a covenant is and what a testament is. He's saying he's looking at this like a last will and testament, and he's saying it's a covenant. Does he not know the difference? And he said a covenant does not require the death of the one who made it. Okay? Well, see, they're wrong. They're wrong. This covenant is different. This is the reason why Messiah, Yeshua, is the mediator of a new covenant, because he had to die in order for us to receive it, and I'll tell you why. Who was the original covenant with? Who? If you look back at really that covenant with that land and that they would receive it, it was with Abraham, right? It was with Abraham. So that Abrahamic covenant, who was going to get that land? Oh, his descendants. So the Abrahamic covenant wasn't really for Abraham, was it? It really wasn't, was it? It was for his descendants, which is fascinating. As a matter of fact, Elohim told Abraham of his death even before he made the covenant with him. Look in Genesis 15, starting at verse 15. And as for you, Abraham, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. Then in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. And it came about when the sun had set that it was very dark, and behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a flaming torch, which passed between these pieces. Let's continue. On that day Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I've given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenite and the Kenizzite and the Cadmonite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Rephaim and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Girgashite and the Jebusite. So, you see, the covenant was for Abraham's heirs to have that land that Elohim gave Abraham forever, because Abraham was obedient to the Torah of the Father. That's in Genesis 26, starting at verse 3. He's talking to Isaac here. Abraham had already died. He tells Isaac, sojourn in this land, and I'll be with you and bless you, for to you and your descendants I'll give all these lands, and I'll establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. And I'll multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven, and will give your descendants all these lands. And by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah. See, which is a huge testimony that the Torah was always there. It wasn't given at Mount Sinai. It's always been there. And Abraham kept it. And because of that, we receive a blessing. Now, the covenant at Mount Sinai was a repetition of the covenant that the people were to obey his Torah, and then they would be his people. They would be Abraham's descendants. Okay? Heirs according to the promise. That's what that old covenant was. It was a repeat of the covenant made with Abraham, and that he would be their Elohim. The covenant was not realized until the death of the one who was the owner. That's established in the Torah. Now, with the people breaking that covenant at Sinai, the covenant was rescinded by Elohim. For us to inherit redemption, the death of the one who owns it must occur. Who owns the covenant? The Father does. It's going to be a new covenant now, a more perfect covenant. That's why Yeshua had to die, to make a new covenant with the sons of Abraham. We read in Galatians 3, starting in verse 27, For all of you who are baptized into Messiah have clothed yourselves with Messiah. There's neither Jew nor Greek, there's neither slave nor free man, there's neither male nor female, for you're all one in Messiah, Yeshua. And if you belong to Messiah, then you're Abraham's offspring, heirs according to promise. Okay? It's through Messiah and his perfect sacrifice that he made that we can be Abraham's offspring, true heirs according to the promise. Yeah.
They're only heirs to the promised land, basically. If they
That's what it, yeah.
Because as like on Mount Sinai, he wasted a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's right. He wasted a bunch of them because just out and out blatant disobedience right off the bat. Yeah, that's correct. You see, people don't, Christianity today doesn't focus on this Abrahamic covenant that was so important that that's why Yeshua came and fulfilled this promise. Okay, it's, once again, if you look at Ephesians 2, and this is the one, I'm saved by grace through my faith. No, you're not. Okay? No, you're not. In Ephesians 2, starting at verse 8, we read, for by grace you've been saved through faithfulness. It's what they should be. It's a Greek word pistis. It should be faithfulness, not faith. It's not, you're not saved because of a vote of confidence that you give Jesus. Okay? That's not why you're saved. It's by grace you've been saved through faithfulness. And by the way, he says whose faithfulness it is. It's not yours. It's not even the one he gave you. Yeah.
But is the original word grace or is it favor?
Well, it could go either way. But it's by the graciousness of the Father. That's all it means. You've been saved through faithfulness. And he says it's not this faithfulness that he's given us that we're saved by. No. It's because he's faithful to keep his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's why we're saved. Through his graciousness. He continues. For by grace you've been saved through faithfulness, that not of yourselves. It's a gift of Elohim. Not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua for good works, which Elohim prepared beforehand, that we would walk in them. We're saved by the graciousness of the Father and his faithfulness to keep his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's why we're saved. We don't earn nothing. Let's forget about our merits because we don't have any. And I guess we know that. All we got to do is be honest with ourselves. Hebrews 9. Let's go back to Hebrews 9. Any questions on that before we go on? You see how to make a new covenant that actually changes the conscience, the owner of that covenant had to die. That's what happened in the Torah. That's what happened here. And we have a better high priest who's experienced all this stuff that you and I have experienced. There's nothing you can say and say, well, you just don't know what it's like. Okay, because he'd been there, and he went through it. Verse 18, therefore even the first covenant was not inaugurated without blood. For when every commandment had been spoken by Moses to all the people according to the Torah, he took the blood of the calves and the goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the covenant which Elohim commanded you. Even the first covenant was dedicated with blood. That's back in Exodus 24 that we just went over last Friday. Starting in verse 5, and he sent young men of the sons of Israel, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as peace offerings to Yahweh. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and the other half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that Yahweh has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. So Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold the blood of the covenant which Yahweh has made with you in accordance with all these words. Without the shedding of blood, there is no testament or covenant made. And it's a covenant. And I say testament. I don't even know where they get the term. You know where they get the term New Testament and Old Testament? It's from this passage right here. The one in Hebrews. Verses 21 and 22 of Hebrews 9. And in the same way, he sprinkled both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry with the blood. And according to the Torah, one may also almost say all things are cleansed with blood. And without shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. That comes from the Torah. Leviticus 17, verse 11, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood by reason of the life that makes atonement. The blood of Messiah pays for our redemption according to the Torah of Elohim. Verses 23 and 24. Therefore, it was necessary for the copies of the things in the heavens to be cleansed with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Messiah did not enter a holy place made with hands, a mere copy of the true one, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim for us. Now you remember all the things that were built, and we're going to go over this. We'll go over in detail the things how the tabernacle was built, probably in too great a detail, but it all had to be cleansed with blood. Okay, that's how it was cleansed. Messiah has purified us by presenting his blood in the true holy place in heaven. Verses 25 and 26. Nor was it that he should offer himself often, as the high priest enters the holy place year by year with blood not his own. Otherwise, he would have needed to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now, once at the consummation of the ages, he has been manifested to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. So his sacrifice is not one that's done continually or annually. He sacrificed himself once to put away sin. You know, what is, how many of y'all have been to a Catholic church? Okay, have you noticed they do the Holy Eucharist? What is that? That is a re-sacrifice of Jesus. It is. It's his real body, his real blood. Ask them. That's what they'll tell you. It's a re-sacrifice of him for their sins. When you walk into a Catholic church, you'll notice the longtime Catholics will come up the aisle, and then they'll go down on one knee and bow or whatever. That's because at the back is last week's Jesus parts. It's Jesus crackers and Jesus wine, Jesus blood.
Transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation. That's correct. Yeah. Yep, not good. Not good. Yeah, they re-sacrifice him every.
That was a good thing for the Christian church to emulate was the way they bowed.
No, they're bowing to Jesus. You don't understand. And not just his statue. Okay.
They're bound to those false idols.
Yeah, well, it's the idols, but it's the real Jesus is there in that cup. Yeah, really. What, you don't believe me?
The Romanized one.
I don't know how some of them guys do that with a straight face. If you've been to the Catholic Church and they do the transubstantiation like you're talking about, it's, the priest will hold up the magic cookie and say, through him, with him, in him, and the power of the Holy Spirit, or something or other. And then they'll have this little altar boy down here. And he'll have his bell go, ding-a-ling-ling-ling-ling-ling. There, it changed to Jesus.
Oh, I need to see this service. They sell tickets to this?
You can walk in free. I don't recommend it. The idols will get you. Yeah, watch it on TV. Did you notice that the bell's going off? That's what it is. Sure, yeah, in the monstrance, it's called. Yep. The Pope carries it. Okay, verses 27. All Christianity is just from that. All Christianity came from that. Okay? The ones that don't. Well, yeah, but, the Protestants, well, what does the term Protestant mean? A protesting Catholic. They're protesting some of the things.
We're the first.
Yeah.
Some of them have stopped protesting, like the Methodist Church have stopped protesting.
Yeah, some of them stop protesting, right? Yep, whatever you, hey, it's all cool, right? You do your thing.
Sunday worshipers.
Verses 27 and 28. Inasmuch as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this comes judgment, so Messiah also, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, shall appear a second time for salvation without reference to sin to those who eagerly await him. Messiah is not returning to pay for sin again. He's coming to gather those who eagerly await him. That's the resurrection. Any questions on Hebrews 9? Yeah.
There are blood sacrifices. We'll have sacrifices again.
Yes, we will have offerings again.
For what?
For what? That's probably for a remembrance of what we were.
But not for sin.
No, not for sin.
So, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Peace and love.
but there's still going to be a world out there. There's still going to be a world out there, okay? There's still going to be sin offerings and guilt offerings.
So would it be like it was, you know, the unintentional, the intentional sin, you know, that it will most likely be.
What it looks like.
The unintentional that you're, you know, appeasing or you're, you know, giving honor to the, you know, to Elohim.
Yeah.
That,
See, there's, you know, like it says in Zechariah, there's still going to be Sukkot, and if Egypt or other nations don't come to Sukkot, what's going to happen? No rain. Yeah. So, and what happened to Sukkot? Offerings galore. There's a bunch of them. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now keep in mind too, even with a tabernacle, even with a temple, it's a shadow of the way things would be. Okay, so us, even without those things, we're living a shadow of a shadow. You know what I mean? We can't fully worship the way that they did 2,000 years ago. We can't, because we can't do the offerings. And it would be an honor. It really would, but we can't even do that. So, but things are going to be, things are going to be different. Yeah.
We have to all get a farm.
I don't know.
I mean, can't raise sheep in an apartment complex.
Right. Well, I think there'll still be designations for that. Yeah. There'll still be designations for that. People designated to do it, I'm sure. But I don't know how it's going to be. We'll just have to see. It's going to be a different world. When it says a new heavens and a new earth, it doesn't mean that this world's going to be destroyed and it's going to make a new globe. Okay? No. It means it's going to be under the Torah of the Father. That's what the new heavens and new earth will be. It's like the new us.